Hey guys, stay patient here and welcome to my first ever video game review. The reason I wanted to review Uncharted 4 was because I've had some strong opinions on this game since before it was even announced, and have even stronger ones now that I've had chance to play it. First things first though, because some of you may not have played the game yet, I wanted to keep it 100% spoiler free, which is why I won't even be showing any footage of the game. We're simply going to have just the menu screen on display here, but hopefully the contents of the review will be enough to keep you watching. So when Naughty Dog originally announced Uncharted 4, I was both surprised and mildly disappointed. I know that's a strange thing to say due to the popularity of the franchise, but my reaction was based on solid reasoning. You see, Naughty Dog always seemed to have followed a pattern with their releases since teaming up with Sony around 20 years ago. Each of the main PlayStation consoles has had a trilogy from Naughty Dog, followed by a fourth game that would either be a direct spin-off from the trilogy or at least influenced by it. The PS1 had the Crash Bandicoot trilogy followed up by the spin-off Crash Team Racing. The Jak and Daxter trilogy on PS2 was joined by Jak X, another spin-off, and last gen we had the Uncharted trilogy, which had at least some influence on their fourth PS3 game, The Last of Us. So as you can see, up until now Naughty Dog had never carried a franchise over from one generation to the next. Whenever a new PlayStation console was on its way, they got cracking on a brand new IP designed to get the most out of the new hardware. It's that dedication to quality and to pushing gaming forward rather than just making money that has earned Naughty Dog a reputation as one of the best developers working today. They're one of the few studios you can rely on to release console-defining video games. Just to clarify though, it wasn't that I didn't expect another Uncharted. I just assumed that Sony would do what they did with Uncharted Golden Abyss on Vita and have Sony Bend work on it, leaving Naughty Dog to do what they do best and start something new. Anyway, so when I heard that for the first time they weren't releasing a new IP as their first game on a console, and then I heard that certain key members of Naughty Dog had left the company, it got me a little concerned. Was their decision to release a sequel to a last-gen game a sign that they'd lost some of their ambition, maybe due to losing some of the more ambitious members of their team? Well, these were thoughts that entered my head, but eventually I figured that they were still the same company at the core. I mean, the members that had left hadn't worked on every game they'd released, but they had all been great. And I recalled an article I'd read about how they were once considering a new Jak and Daxter game, but during brainstorming for it, the ideas they loved the most actually suited a different style of game. And so, The Last of Us was born. In other words, a new Uncharted would only be agreed upon if the best ideas they had could be effectively implemented into the Uncharted formula. Or at least I hoped that was still their philosophy. So how has that worked out for them? Well, during the early stages of the game, there's a lot of exposition and not a lot of action, but that's fine by me. I enjoyed seeing where the characters are now, and to be honest, it takes those first few chapters to really get your head around how incredible it looks. This could be one of the prettiest games ever made. Getting further into the game, it seemed to have a lot of alternating between simple climbing sections and basic combat encounters, which consist of larger, sort of more open areas than previous games in the series. But that's how Uncharted usually does it. They build up to the big moments. Upon reaching and playing through the extended car chase sequence that was shown a lot during trailers and previews, I began thinking, wow, if this is what they were happy showing before release, then I can't wait to see the main set pieces that they've kept hidden. You see, one of the main draws of Uncharted is the epic and forever memorable set pieces that leave you in awe. But eventually I finished the game and realised there'd been nothing that would stick with me like the train scene from Uncharted 2 or the plane and boat sequences from Uncharted 3 did at the time. Now, this wouldn't have mattered so much if a lot of effort had gone into improving and building on the combat in the game, because that seemed to be the main focus now. They've obviously tried to enhance the combat experience by adding more choice when it comes to how to approach an encounter. Stealth has been pushed to the forefront as a viable option, but you do need to adjust on the fly because no area has been designed to be able to be stealthed all the way through. You must be able to make use of the fact that you can now lose the attention of the enemies if you're hidden for long enough, which does lead to quite an organic approach to combat encounters. But this is where one of the main issues with the game lies. The controls and combat mechanics have never been Uncharted's strongest aspect, and now with stealth being more of a regular option rather than just used in specific sections, you'd think that the controls would get an overhaul to suit this new playstyle. But no, not really. In fact, the controls can cause a huge amount of frustration, especially if, like me, you attempt to play on crushing difficulty from the outset. As an example, the circle button is used to drop down to a ledge, to get into cover, and to roll. I can't count the number of times I was pressing circle while near a ledge and a piece of cover and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to. Other times you'd roll off a ledge to grab it in the usual way, but Nathan wouldn't do so, causing you to fall to your death. These things can cause big problems whether you're trying to stealth or not, because getting seen on crushing difficulty results in a quick death, and some areas are very large with 0 checkpoints until you've made it all the way through. And if you try and play it as more of a shooter, a lot of the cover in the game is breakable, meaning you often find yourself with nowhere to take refuge from the hail of gunfire, which is also rather frustrating. There are some minor new features like the grappling hook rope swing, which I use more during traversal than combat because, again, playing on crushing means you die very quickly if seen, so unfortunately that particular new feature doesn't aid you in the harder difficulty runs. In fact, it's basically unusable because it leaves you too exposed. Ironically, it turns out that you can complete the game on any difficulty to unlock modifiers such as infinite ammo or slow motion, as well as the ability to equip any weapon you like. And these features can be used on any difficulty, making crushing much easier. But why even have a high difficulty setting if you're going to water it down and make it as simple as the lower settings through the use of these modifiers, which also take away the need to play the game as it was designed to be played? Now, I know what you're thinking. It sounds like I hate Uncharted 4, but I really don't. It still has the same charm and brilliant writing that all the previous games have had. The story itself is great, and it's a wonderful way to draw Nathan Drake's adventures to a close. The cutscenes are excellent, with amazing voice acting and motion capture, as well as the rest of the game looking incredible too. There's also some nice little moments of fan service thrown in, and I'm sure I would have enjoyed the whole experience more if I hadn't gone straight into the unbalanced crushing difficulty that just exaggerates the flaws. But apart from the improved graphics, of course, all of these positive points were also true of the last gen Uncharted titles. With this being a new generation, you'd expect Naughty Dog of all people to really pull something special out of the bag for this final iteration, especially after seeing what they were capable of with The Last of Us, which was a last gen title. But they didn't seem to have the same vision with this game as they've had in the past. They made a competent title, but one that not only didn't really try anything particularly new, but also one that in many ways is a step back from the other Uncharted games. The combat mechanics and controls can be very frustrating, and the combat itself is very much by the numbers with minor additions but not a lot of innovation or polish. And unlike the prequels, there are no truly memorable moments that will stick with you for years to come. I still remember so much from the second and third games all those years ago, but having just completed Uncharted 4 now, there's already not a lot I remember at all. So my score for Uncharted 4 is an 8. It's still a great game in its own right and definitely worth playing, but knowing what Naughty Dog are capable of and having played the excellent original trilogy, I really expected more. Let's hope they've gone back to the drawing board for their next release and can stretch themselves as usual to wow us like they have so many times in the past.